Hey everyone, it's Daniel here. Before we get into today's episode, just want to give you a quick reminder that I will be hosting a giveaway for the podcast soon. The podcast is turning one in June. It's turning one in June on June the 13th, and I'm excited to do a giveaway to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of the show. I did a short episode about the giveaway, detailing everything, and there'll also be some details in the description of today's episode about the giveaway. But just to quickly give you some details about how you can enter and what it's for, I'm partnering with the Isaiah 117 House for this giveaway. If you are not aware, the Isaiah 117 House is a Tennessee-based nonprofit organization that provides physical and emotional support in a safe and loving home for children awaiting foster care placement. They have locations all across the Southeast United States, and they're a really, really great organization, and so I'm excited to have this opportunity to partner with them. If you want to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is make a donation to the Isaiah 117 House through Venmo. You can make your donation in $5 increments. So if you make a $5 donation, that will be one submission into the giveaway. A $10 donation will be two submissions, and so on and so forth. The winner of the giveaway will be announced on Monday, June the 12th, and they will receive the first ever Radio Face t-shirt, the first ever Radio Face sticker, and a $50 Visa gift card, all given to you, shipped straight to you. So again, you can make as many entries as you like. All proceeds will go directly to the Isaiah 117 House. None of this will be coming back to me, so I really hope you take this opportunity to support this great organization, all the great work they're doing. If you don't have, to make a donation, you'll need to do it through Venmo. So if you don't have a Venmo account, you can download it for free on your phone, hook up your bank account, and then make a donation to the Chambliss Center, which handles all the finances for the Isaiah 117 House. The handle for the Chambliss Center on Venmo is at ChamblissCenter. That's where you can find them on Venmo. And whenever you make this donation to enter the giveaway, just make a note with your donation, just distinguishing that this is for the giveaway. So you can make a note saying Radio Face Podcast. You can make a note that just says podcast. You can make a note that says giveaway, anything along those lines that denotes that you are making this donation to the Isaiah 117 House for this giveaway. As I said, the winner will be announced on Monday, June the 12th, so you've got a lot of time to enter this giveaway, and I'm really excited to partner with the Isaiah 117 House and raise some money for a great cause. Thank you all for all the support you've given me over this year so far, and I'm excited for year number 2. Thank you for the Isaiah 117 House for partnering with me, and I'm really excited to take this opportunity to help out a great organization. There'll be some more details about this down in the description, so if you'd like to learn more, head down there to the description, check everything out down there for more details, and if you have any questions about the giveaway, feel free to reach out to me on social media at radiofacepod on all social media platforms, or simply go to... or simply email me at radiofacepod@gmail.com with any questions you have about the show or about the giveaway. Thank you again for all your support, and now let's jump into the episode. Hey there, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel Trinham, and I will be your host as always. Before we get started with today's episode, I want to let you know of a few things of note. First, you may or may not be aware that I host another podcast called The Third Seat. The Third Seat is unrelated to the podcast you are listening to right now, but if you'd like to check it out, then I will put a link in the description of today's episode that you can use to listen to it. If you like this podcast, then I really think you will like The Third Seat as well, so I highly recommend you check it out. Next, I want to let you know of a few ways you can support the podcast. First, be sure to tell a friend if you enjoy the show. Word of mouth is not only a great way to help support the show, but it's also zero cost. Secondly, if you enjoyed today's episode, then be sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Leaving a positive review is one of the best ways of not only supporting the show, but it also gives me direct feedback from you regarding how you feel about the show overall. I greatly appreciate if you decide to take the time to support the show in any of these ways. Finally, if you'd like to follow me or the show on social media, then feel free to check out the description of today's episode. Here you will find all affiliated and mentioned links, as well as how you can support the show online. As always, I want to thank you for tuning into and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. But first, I'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Lucky to Know You Apparel. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever loved your friend so much that you just want to squeeze them until they explode? Well, this local Chattanooga-based clothing brand wants to portray that feeling into a community that appreciates the people in their lives. Today's sponsor, Lucky to Know You Apparel, is using fashion and feelings to bring people together, making them ecstatically say, "Can you believe we happen to exist at the same time?" Check out their Instagram at Lucky to Know You Apparel and website www.luckytoknowyou.com to purchase your own apparel or gift one to a friend. Listeners of this podcast can use code FEELINLUCKY for 15% off your next order. Again, that is code FEELINLUCKY, spelled FEELINLUCKY at checkout for 15% off your next order. And hey, if no one has told you today, we are lucky to know you. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel Trinham. I will be your host for this episode as always, and I'm really excited to bring this episode to you. Today's episode is the conclusion of a small three-part interview series I've been doing with the owners and founders of The Book and Cover, a independent bookstore here in Chattanooga. Personally, one of my favorite places to go in general, but definitely one of my favorite bookstores in this area. And so the first two episodes were with Emily Lilly and Blaze Green, and now today I have the privilege of speaking with Miss Sarah Jackson. So Sarah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel.
Yeah, so just for the audience that may not be aware of you and kind of what you do, would you care to just share a little bit about yourself and just kind of how you got to where you are and what's been going on in your world lately?
Sure. I, as you mentioned, am the third of three owners. And Blaze, Emily, and I all grew up in Chattanooga. And the bookshop was born sort of dual-channeled, I would say, or in the way that I think about it. One, we are all from Chattanooga. We love Chattanooga and became readers in Chattanooga and wanted to offer a space to readers and folks who wanted to be in kind and curious, thoughtful literary community with other Chattanoogans. And also, we realized that we had this shared dream when we were having one of those kinds of fireside chats that were very common in the more isolated parts of 2020. And kind of this sense of like, it was helpful to think hopefully about what might come next. And October of 2020 was not necessarily a time where there was a lot of hope or optimism. And so it was a helpful therapeutic exercise to gather with folks and think about hope and joy and what would bring that into our lives and what would we do if we could and what will we do when we can. And so that's where the bookshop came from. And I think now, almost a year and a half, just shy of a year and a half, maybe, to see that it has both fulfilled all of our expectations and sort of what we said we wanted to do, but then has also far exceeded what we said and thought we would do. So it's been a really neat endeavor.
You know, it's funny, just hearing you describe this. In my opinion, I consider I've had the distinct privilege of now speaking with you and kind of hearing the different perspectives of what you all do and how you all got to where you are from, Emily and Blaze. And it's funny, I've heard about the, at this point, kind of fabled, kind of like back porch fireside conversations you all had about when you first started. And I remember, I guess both of them talked about it a little bit, but just how in the beginning it was just kind of like, wouldn't that be kind of cool if we did this thing where we opened a store? And it's like, yeah, that would be kind of cool. Yeah. And they detailed like how it kind of started. It was first just like oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool, but we probably won't do that. And then it eventually morphed into its own thing, and now it's compounded into what it is now. And it's really, I think it's a great story of. One, I know it's been told 100 times, but like you really can do whatever you put your mind to, honestly. But also, like, you all have from what I can tell, you have followed not necessarily you haven't followed a dream of necessarily making the most amount of money or building a business empire, but following something you're passionate about. And that's really what this all stemmed from. It was just you all talking about things that you enjoyed during a time that wasn't so great for a lot of people. And you ran with it, and that's really cool. And obviously there's a lot of challenges. Blaze described it as learning from like a fire hose of information, just constant information and stuff coming. But it's like I can see it just in the way that you all interact with the community, like the events you do, the way you talk about it. It's really, really cool to see that. And it's inspiring for me because I know there's lots of things I want to do in my life. And, when you see examples of people that are able to kind of cross that threshold to a degree of turning nothing into something, it's really cool. So it's been cool to have that opportunity on my end of things,
And I think I would offer to anyone who is in the space where, that it starts as kind of a wondering and an imagining, to go from that place of wonder and dreaming and imagining to enacting and operating. There's a lot, yes, that is up to the individual in terms of strategy and planning and getting pieces in the right place. But there's also a lot of other environmental pieces that we were really fortunate to have. There was a lot of circumstances and community connections and folks who were really gracious to us to offer a lot of insight and clarity or actual physical means and resources. So yes, I hope that people feel encouraged by our story. And I want to offer that there is a lot more than just like grit and will that goes into realizing something like what we've done. And so while I want to preserve the kind of mythology of it, I also, on the spectrum of it, want to make sure that I'm being realistic about, we had a lot of privilege and we had a lot of folks who really helped bolster and buttress this effort. So it wasn't just like, oh, if you really, really want something, just do it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors that go into, and we were really fortunate. And so I just want to offer that too.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So something I want to ask you about. So at the time of this recording, the second annual Ink Drink just happened this past weekend. I wasn't able to attend. I'd be back home for some stuff going on back in my hometown, but I was able to be at the one last year. And I know that the one last year was a little bit different from this year, but now that you have, you're 2 or 3 days removed from it, what are your immediate thoughts of everything that was going? It looked like it was really cool. And if I could have been there, I would have 1,000,000% been there for the little walk run around the block. That was right up my alley. So I was definitely sad I wasn't able to be there for that. But what are your thoughts now that you're a couple days removed from that?
I think my experience between the two, as I just reflect as an individual, is that the first year we were so excited. We had programming planned every hour of the day. Yeah. And that felt very, it was very ambitious, you might say. And it was representative of kind of this like brimming enthusiasm that we had, at that point, when we did the first Ink Drink, we hadn't even been open for a year. And so at the end of that experience, I just remember feeling like a pretty profound sense of fatigue and like, gosh, that was just a lot. And I don't know that the way that I participated in it, or like, I don't know, kind of, it felt very frenetic. And having some opportunity to kind of reflect on that and then get some space, we sort of, in planning for the second Ink Drink, took the approach of what if we did fewer things, but we did them very well, and we programmed them really thoughtfully, and we also got to know our readers. The first Ink Drink, our community we were new, and our relationships with our community were new. I mean, at that point, we had only done a few book clubs. We had only had a few events. So the way we were still, it's a very relational, or we try to be very relational in the way that we run our business. And so much of the way that we operate and exist is in response to our readers. And so this year it was just really neat. Yeah, we learned that we had a really strong audio reading community. And so having an opportunity to celebrate that as reading, because that's a whole conversation where folks can be disparaging or critical and not qualify, what does it mean to really quote unquote read? So we were really supportive of audio readers, and that was a really lovely way to begin the day. And then to have time for the kiddos, which is just always going to be a little bit of circus chaos in the best way. And then to kind of slow it down and have the short story authors write, so gracious of the three of them to write stories and have those read, and have our great Hutton & Smith branded brew. And then to have the evening event that we got to ticket. And again, just it felt at the end of the day for me as a participant and operator, I had a complete experience of the day, and I really could think back and reflect on individual moments. And it wasn't like I got to the end and was like, what even went on? So.
Yeah. It's funny the way you describe it when you were talking about the first one. For whatever reason, and I don't know, maybe this may just be a me thing. You mentioned like you all haven't even, you're approaching 1.5 years, 2 years. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And for me, it's weird because I remember before you all opened, I'm sure you've heard this 100 times, or if you haven't, then I'll be the first one. But like, I was wanting a place like what you all offer. There wasn't really a combination of everything that you all do available that I was aware of. There's different elements of what you all do, but there wasn't kind of the one-stop place. And ever since you all opened, it kind of has always felt like you all have always been here, to a degree, at least for me. And not that I've been here my whole life. Like I've only lived in Chattanooga for about 5 years, but it's funny you say that, because it's the reaction from my perspective of the community to what you all do, and especially events like this. I think you all are really fulfilling a need or desire that was there. Because it's you all have really cultivated not just an audience, not just people that want to read books, but people that are really passionate about the way you all approach reading books and selling books. It's not just, hey, you can come buy books here, just like you can buy books anywhere. You really cultivated an experience. It's funny. I don't know if I have. I don't know if I told this to Blaze or Emily, but the first time I ever walked into I don't even know if it was either the day of the opening or like the weekend of it was sometime around there. And I walked in, and it was just really cool because I come from a really small town. There's not even really bookstores around there. There's like some kind of old knick-knacky places, but I'd never been in a place that each area and each part of the building was curated to a different experience. And so to see you all then, kind of extrapolate that out to different experiences, at Ink Drink, it's really, really, really cool, for lack of better words, to see you all turn a store into something that has a community around it. And I really think you all are seeing seeing the beginnings of that, because I don't think anybody can open a bookstore. There's plenty of places you can, if you just want to sell books, there's lots of different ways to do that. But I really believe what you all do goes beyond just selling a few books here and there and, giving some people something to do in their free time. It's really, really cool. And I know for me personally, it's a place that I like to go to, even if I'm not looking for a book to read, just to go there and hang out and see what's going on, and, pet Birdie if he's there, and then just get some coffee, So it's really, really cool. For you, how does the way the community has kind of grown into, bringing you all as into the community, how has that really impacted you personally?
Oh, wow. I think one of my first so Blaze, Emily, and I were not necessarily best friends growing up. We all attended the same high school in town, girls preparatory school. Blaze and Emily are a few years older than me. They graduated in a class a few years older than me. Emily and I ran track together and had a relationship there that was very warm, but weren't necessarily involved in one another's lives outside of that. And so the fact that the three of us really reconnected through kind of a book club and through a love of reading, and then that has been what has sort of sustained us, this idea of reading. We all read really pretty differently. Like there are certainly books that we've all read and enjoyed, but we kind of always like to point them out as being kind of unicorns. And we all have a lot of regard for one another and for the genres and books that we enjoy reading and enjoy being in conversation with one another about it. And that felt that our business relationship feels very much like a microcosm of how I want to be in community with folks. There's this great, I think I heard Amy Poehler say it, and I don't necessarily know that she was the first person to say it, but this idea of like, good for her, not for me. Sometimes we refer to it in our house as not yucking somebody else's yum. But just this idea of learning to be in spaces where you can love something, a book, a genre, whatever it is, someone else cannot enjoy it, but you can still be in community with one another. And so I think that has been, to me, and there's just not a lot of spaces that I participate in where that kind of mutual regard and care and curiosity are encouraged. And so I think the way that I've been impacted by the shop is it's certainly made my thinking and way of being with folks more expansive. And I think just to realize that the way that I love and care about something is informed by my experiences, somebody's aversion to it might be informed by their experiences. And there's an opportunity for us to still connect and have and take care of each other and regard one another positively. And that's something that's really, really easy for me to espouse in theory. And it's not always something that I do in practice, but I like that I have a space that I show up to where that's part of our mission and our vision and our values. And so that holds me accountable. And just the readers that I have met, I mean, I could not have imagined. So for each of the book clubs that I co-facilitate with some folks, we have these group me's, and so that there have been connections that have spawned outside of just the book clubs that meet physically in the shop, and just the way that those folks are my friends, and they take care of me, and I get the opportunity to take care of them. And like, I don't know that I could have ever imagined that opening a retail space would have afforded that kind of community to me. Like, certainly there was that kind of aspiration, but experiencing it feels wildly different than like hammering it into a business plan.
Yeah. And personally, I really think something that you all have to your advantage is a little bit of what you're alluding to there. There's a lot of, I think something that I know I have kind of grown not super fond of, and I think a lot of people are, as time has gone on, is any kind of retail storefront or any kind of business that just kind of feels like an entity that's just existing, and they serve some kind of product or service, but that's kind of it. And something I think you all really have to your advantage is that you all specifically, like obviously you have employees, but you all are there and you're interacting with the people that come in, and you're making conversation with them, even if you don't know them. Like you're physically there. I know it's funny to, like I said, it's funny to talk about it now, but I remember going in the first time and I'd interacted with you, and you were behind the counter, and you, I don't even remember what it was, but at the time I was like, that was really cool. Like, I know that they own this place, and it made me feel not just like someone buying a product or getting a service or whatever, but I felt a part of something, And I think you all have really put yourself in a really cool position where, yes, you're obviously trying to make money and sell a product and so on and so forth, but you have grown it beyond that to where I think a lot of the people that come in your building don't just see it as a storefront or don't just see it as a business, but see it as it's a business run by people that really care, that really want to be a part of something bigger than that business. And I think that's really cool, because I don't think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of businesses that put on that facade that want to make you think that it's a part of something bigger than them, or they're, some kind of little mom and pop store or something that's not really one. But I think you all really have nailed that so far, and it makes the experience better for everybody, and that's really cool. I don't think we have a lot of that, and I'm glad we have some of that,
Well, that's very generous. Thank you. I think obviously you are experiencing it, or maybe not obviously. That is very much how we want folks to experience it. And it can be hard to manage both. I don't want to ever misrepresent that we are a for-profit independent bookstore. We do need to make money in order to, one, continue to operate, but also because we like paying our booksellers like not only a livable wage, but like a wage that allows them to have joy in their lives. And so navigating that and being mindful that requires sales. So there is a sales aspect to it. And yes, wanting to be a space that people do feel tended to in a way that maybe isn't necessarily about getting them to purchase a good. And it can be hard. I mean, I will speak for myself, like that can be a hard thing to manage of wanting to go in either direction and making sure that there's harmony between those two aims is not always evident or intuitive. And so I'm really grateful to be with Blaze and Emily. I can't imagine doing this by myself and get to have a lot of those conversations about like, okay, here's what our values are. We know that we are a shop, so let's evaluate, acting in this way or offering this type of programming or, curating, like how is this all gonna fit and work towards both of these aims. So.
Yeah. Something I do want to ask, and I've failed to ask this the last two interviews, and I meant to and just never did. And I feel like the answer to this probably is going to be obvious or should be obvious, but forgive me for it not being.
I'm excited to hear the question.
Well, I hope it's a good question then. Where did the name Ink Drink come from? I feel like it. I really like it, but I thought
that
wondered,
this was going to be a way more like.
Well, I have other questions, but I have been meaning to ask this of the other two guests, and I was like, what does this mean?
I'm happy
because I do like it, but I'm like, what is it? Where did it come from?
When we were building out our business plan and developing the crowd fund, which is how we raised the startup capital to open, we were looking at the different tiers of incentives for folks to contribute to the crowd fund. And we were looking at different monikers that are assigned to readers. So, for example, like a bookworm, etc. And we found that in France, like a bookworm, somebody who is like a bibliophile or reads a lot, is a drinker of ink, an ink drinker. And when we discovered that, we were like, one, that's a fantastic tier for the crowd fund. And two, we obviously have to have an event called the Ink Drink. So
I see it. I like it now.
It's perhaps an underwhelming tale, which is mainly just Google searches, but that's
I do like it because I knew it obviously had, the ink, like, ink on a paper, on a book or on paper, and then, like, I was like, it has to have something with that, but I feel like there's got to be something. I feel like there's something I missed, and I didn't know that. I didn't know it had French roots. So that's
very poetic.
Well, it's very on brand. I like that.
Heavy metaphor.
Yeah.
We are not actually drinking ink. There's no ritual.
You heard it here first, folks.
That's right.
On a somewhat unrelated note, so I really have been meaning to ask that, and after every interview, I was like, I should have asked them. I meant to ask what that was about.
Third time's a charm.
I like it. So you had kind of mentioned earlier how you and Emily and Blaze all have different, different preferences and different tastes in books and everything, and I had a little bit of a conversation with them about that. I have realized I was not a huge reader growing up, and I really got into it in the past. Really, honestly, in 2020, because I had nothing else to do, and I've become a fairly avid reader, I guess I'll say now. But thank you. And when I started reading, I, for whatever reason, told myself this story that I only was allowed to read like nonfiction books that were like super hard hitting and like you're going to learn the universe's worth of knowledge in a book and all these things, and it was a bold ambition, and I'll spoiler alert, I didn't learn the universe's knowledge.
Reading a lot of like physics textbooks?
What was I guess I should clarify.
What qualifies as?
Not like textbooks necessarily, but more like I guess like borderline. This is gonna sound like borderline self-help books, but not from the standpoint of like I need to get my life together. It was more like I'm gonna learn
psychology.
The thing. Yeah. It was more like I'm gonna read this book and I'm gonna know like the secrets of this person.
We call that topical nonfiction.
Yeah,
or a memoir. I mean, if it's about something.
Yeah, and not to like shame those books or anything, but it just wasn't. I realized very quickly I was like, I'm just not enjoying this. Like I would pick up these books and be like, I'm not excited to read this.
Where do you think that story about reading came from for you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think honestly, this is my best guess. I think it's two-pronged. I didn't read a lot growing up, and so I felt like whenever I got into reading, I needed to like make up for lost time and like read what I felt were like important books, like not necessarily classics, but like in my view, it's like, oh, these are like the serious books. Like this isn't that, whatever, like these are serious books. And
because it's real.
Yes, because it's real. Yeah. That was my view at the time. And I think also I started reading in 2020. And as we know, everything bad that could have happened in 2020. And I think in my mind, I was like, I want to read something that's maybe going to show me a different side of life that will empower me to maybe, add something to my life that'll benefit it a little bit, Yeah. And again, I'm not going to act like I didn't take anything from those books, but it was a little too much of the same thing at some point for me.
Right.
And I've come to really, like I told them, I've come to realize that I really, really enjoy now, like I almost, not exclusively, but about 80% of what I read is like fiction books, and more specifically like mystery and thriller books. Like I love those kind of books now. Like I'll pick them up and flip through them like it's nothing. And then I'll pick up, a book maybe like of what I read when I first started. And I was like, I don't really want to read this now. So I say all of that to say, what are do you have any like hot takes on any like classics or any books or any genres that you're maybe not like a huge fan of or anything? And I'll preface, I'll give a bit from personal experience. So I didn't realize this until I realized it. So I've become, I can't, I guess I'm not even a guilty pleasure at this point. Big, like I can't help myself when it comes to like Dan Brown books. Like I know I'm late to that party, but I've read like 2 or 3 of them, and every single one of them, like, I don't know what it is. I just really enjoy them. But I know that some people are like, oh, it's just like a cheap veneer of like, European art and stuff like that. But I've read through 2 or 3 of them, and they're like some of my favorite books. So I want to ask you, what are some of your like, if you have any hot takes on any books like that? And if you're not a Dan Brown fan, you're also not going to hurt my feelings at all. So you can be like those books are terrible if you don't want to.
As I have previously stated, I do not yuck anyone's yum.
You're not going to hurt my feelings if you're not a huge fan.
And I want to go back too, because something that you said earlier when you were talking about your journey with reading is you qualified that you weren't a reader and what I heard you say was because you didn't read a certain amount of books, and that's something that we try to gently encourage folks, because sometimes we'll get college students in who are being required to read so much, and they're like, I just don't feel like a reader because I don't have the bandwidth. And we're like, no, you are a reader. You're just not in a season where there's a lot of reading for pleasure right now, but you're still a reader. So it doesn't matter if you read 1 book a year. It doesn't matter if you read 200 books a year. Everybody is a reader. It doesn't matter if you listen to books. It doesn't matter if you physically hold them in your hand and move your eyes over the words. Mm-hmm. You're a reader. So
I should qualify one more thing. I was a reader in the sense that you couldn't pull the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books out of my hands if you tried whenever I was younger. Those and the Magic Treehouse books in middle school, I was there for those.
You were an avid reader then.
Yeah. So
but you had an understanding of reading as being limited to a certain type of.
Yeah, and there were also whenever I was younger, like that was when like the Twilight books were real big, and I remember looking at those and I was like, I could never read that many words if you paid me to. I couldn't do that, know. But it's funny now, but that was like my bread and butter at the time. So
I'm very excited to be reading and book selling in a time where what I perceive happening is that folks are really moving away from even a best of list. I don't feel like there's a lot of utility, because who decides? Who gets to decide what the best book is? Who is making the consideration, learning about those folks? Because of course we're going to bring our own experiences into something. And so what might make a book for me, the best book of the year or the best book that I read or a book I read, is going to be really different from the reader sitting across from me. And so I think it's really important to reframe the way that we talk about books. And so maybe that's a hot take. So I definitely, my genres of choice and the way that you enjoy Dan Brown and psychological thrillers. And you don't have to I loved that you revised when you were like, oh, it's not a guilty pleasure. It's not. That's, if anything, that's my hot take. We should stop calling things that we enjoy guilty pleasures. Strike it from your lexicon. Don't qualify things that bring you joy. Yeah. Don't associate shame or guilt with them. You can certainly get curious about what it is that you enjoy about them, but get rid of it. That's my hot take. But
I would second that as well, personally.
I think so. I lead, or I co-lead our romance and fantasy book clubs, and then with Blaze and Emily also do the cocktail book club. And I think something that I've really enjoyed with readers in the shop is getting to broaden folks' understanding of romance as a genre. And both historically, the way, who has written romance, who reads romance, but then also presently, what is happening in the romance genre and the way that the form of the romance genre works. Those are just always really endlessly fascinating conversations for me. And I am a very staunch defender of the genre. So my second hot take would be we should have more romance in our canon.
And it's funny. I had a feeling you were going to say that because
my reputation precedes
me. Yes. All good things, of course. But Emily and Blaze, I'd asked them about this a little bit, and they were like, "Yeah, and Sarah's really into romance." So, but it's funny, like
I'm really into romance.
Yeah. But it's, I really have grown to empathize a lot with what you're saying because, like, even though, I have become a more, I guess I'll say a more frequent reader since, 2020-ish. Yeah. Something I've really grown to realize and appreciate is that, however you come to reading, like whatever your bread and butter is, like, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, for me at the time, for whatever reason, I had this idea. I was like, these are the books that I can read, and like those are the only thing, and it's all just information, soak it up, whatever. And there's a time and a place for that, I think, certainly. And if that's like, if that's what you just love, then hey, go for it. Like, what does it matter to me?
I think it's important that you pay attention to what you're reading, and so that you can both be reading and enjoying something, and then you can also have a critical lens through which you are consuming, where you're like, what am I enjoying about this? Mm-hmm. Oh, is there a way that somebody's experience has been represented that might be harmful? Or am I exclusively reading the perspective of this character, or am I exclusively reading about this? And so, I think interrogating that is the way to do that. Yeah,
and I think it's interesting too. I'm going to assume this is the case for other people, but if I could be wrong. Yeah. Well, listen. I've made it this far, assuming some things. I'll cautiously assume some things, but I think that it's interesting that for a lot of people, we don't tend to have this attitude of like, oh, you can only. A lot of times I think that people can have the attitude, it's like, oh, you got to read the classics first, and then you can read this, or like, oh, you have to read, like, this genre is for children. Like, you don't read that. You need to read this at this age. Mm-hmm. But we don't really do that for a lot of other art or entertainment mediums. Like, if, like, I love Star Wars movies. Favorite franchise, love them. I've seen them all. They're my favorites. Have them all. I watch them. Favorite. And like at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of people out in space running around. It's a on paper, it's just like a classic adventure love story. And that's about it. Nothing.
Epic Odyssey.
Yeah, and like there's some kind of subversive themes here and there, but it's like anybody can watch it.
Very political. The original trilogy.
Yes. Yeah. And I love it. But there's also like at the same time there are what people would consider more profound, like not necessarily movies made for keeping entertained. There's not things flying around all the time. They're kind of slow burner movies that I also love, and no one ever looks at me and is like, well, that's kind of odd. Like, you like this thing, but you also like this thing. Why why is that? And I think it's interesting that kind of doesn't apply in some areas, or at least from my perspective, it doesn't seem to apply. Yet for whatever reason, it does seem to apply in in some areas, or some people apply it to reading. If you know.
And I think increasingly, and perhaps unfortunately, I'll say in my experience, unfortunately, I think it is right that we want to be known to other people. We want to be known to our community. And one way that we do that is by professing interest and adoration of, media. And so there is a way for me to connect with somebody who is watching a television show or is reading a book, and it's kind of like instant. And I think what then we grapple with is we're like, okay, I have been seen and known as somebody who consumes, this kind of media or enjoys this kind of media. And if I diverge from that and I then consume other types of media and enjoy it, there can feel like there's this dissonance of like, well, then which community am I a part of? And can I hold both of these things? And I think, again, I'm glad to see us kind of inching away from that of, I think that you can have folks who for example, am very excited that we are in the month of May 2023 because Fast 10 is coming out. I'm a huge fan of the Fast and the Furious film franchise.
Really?
Huge fan. Love it. I love them.
I did not expect that, but I love that. It's hilarious.
Love them. Yes. And so, and that is just something that I am learning not to necessarily qualify to folks as then that I need to like list off a bunch of art house, like David Lynch media that I also enjoy consuming. It's okay to, and certainly I can also be critical of those films. Yeah. And I think that's some of what we're hopefully moving into a space of and there's a great Substack that an author wrote that I really enjoy, who's kind of talking about that like everything that we consume, does not necessarily need to be like 100% in alignment with like our values and like who we are as people. There's a way that you can critically consume. And certainly there is media and there are creators who through their choices are causing harm. And so thinking critically about whether or not you want to patronize them and, give them money when you consume their work so that they might continue to harm folks we need to be considerate of. And we need to be mindful that there is a way that we can move through the world, or else all the media that we consume is just going to be like virtue signaling.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of referring to the classic like art versus artist debate. Like, can you separate it? And it's, I think on that note, I think a lot of times there's no perfect answer that I've seen in that regard. Because I'm a huge music fan. Like I love listening to music. I try to stay up to date. And like there's many examples of like, oh, you listen to this person, but like you say you don't like this person. Right. It's like, how do you marry those two? Right. And I think honestly the best example, or not the best solution I guess I can think of is you simply just have to take it a case by case basis. Like I know there's plenty. Every person on the planet Earth has done things that we're not proud of, and we've done things and said things. And if we all were unfortunate enough to have every single thing we've ever done plastered by our name every time someone sees us, it'd be very unfortunate. Yeah. And so it's kind of like how your approach to the way you consume your media isn't necessarily. If you are taking it from a genuine place and you are aware of the things that could, the potential kind of downsides of whatever this person has done, that's all you can really ask. As long as you're aware and it's safe for you to consume it, it's not. I think there's much worse. There's bigger fish to fry. I think I'm not going to lose sleep over if you're listening to person A and I listen to person B because I don't like this person. You whatever.
Right.
And I think that's really the best way to take it because every single situation is different, and you just it's really hard to kind of find a way to blanketly solve that issue.
Yeah. And I think something that I'm developing is that the ability to concede when, I consume this, and you can change your mind and you can make a different decision and you can make repair. I think that's increasingly, sometimes it feels that what's being modeled for us is when you do make a decision or you do exhibit behavior or willfully choose to harm a community, and when then somebody calls out, instead of seeking to move towards correction and repair, there is this kind of schism that happens where it's like, well, now I'm going to further entrench myself in this ideology, space, community, and then like the gaps get ever wider. And so I think for me, it's like, okay, yes, if I do consume art by this person but they have acted in a way that's not consistent with my values. Like, I want to get curious about that, and I want to pay attention to that, and I want to think critically about that. And so I think the things that make me the most discouraged is that we seem to sometimes be moving away from like critical lenses of viewing things, right? So the sort of whole uproar about critical race theory is like, that is a lens through which to view society. And so like anything that encourages us to think more critically about the world that we move through, I am pro. And so I think that is something that books allow us to do, right? Is that there's a lot of different experiences. And I love when I get to talk in a book club and say, like, this character acted in this way, and that is not consistent with my values, but then they acted in a way that was consistent with my values, which means maybe they're inconsistent. Wait, am I inconsistent? Like, I think there's like a realizing things about self that you can have in reading. And then hopefully that makes you a more empathetic, kind neighbor and community member. So.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Something I do want to ask you about, and I was not aware of this, but now that we've opened this up a little bit, so didn't know that you were a big fan of the Fast saga series, whatever the correct term is now.
The family,
yeah,
Daniel.
yeah, the
Fast and the Furious family.
Yes,
the
of course.
franchise.
And it's funny. I mean, it's like it's an inescapable like media entity now. Like everybody knows about it, and it's funny.
I tell people all the time I claim it for fantasy now. It has gone full fantasy. Well, they are my Avenger.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Is growing up, like I don't know when the first Fast and Furious movie came out, but I don't think I watched a movie, not because I was like, I've never been a car person, and so I wasn't like, oh, this is the movie I want to go see.
Oh, I'm not either. I want to make that really clear.
Yeah, but I didn't watch it. I think the first one I saw might have been like the 7th or 8th one.
Oh, wow.
I think like very, very deep into it, Yeah. Like I was very deep into it, and I was just like, yeah, my friends are going to see this, whatever, let's just go see. And my experience with it so far is very like, the only movies I've seen have been like some of the more recent ones. And so it's funny to see the kind of way it's changed over time, because initially when it started, it was like street racing, car culture, like sweaty dudes in tank tops and working on, and now it's like we're taking a car to space. Like it's very different. Exactly. And so I want to ask you, what are your kind of favorites of this area? Like what are some of the things about this particular franchise and this series that draws you to it?
So I think what I enjoy about the Fast and the Furious franchise is I am somebody who I love genre. So the romance genre, like I love any time, and like for mystery thriller, like there is a conceit and the way that we operate in this. Within romance, you have this whole idea of like tropes. And so, oh my goodness, these two people who are not getting along suddenly have to go on a work trip together, and the hotel makes a mistake, and so there's only one room and they have to share the bed. Like, what's going to happen? Yeah. I love that. And so I think I love what I enjoy about the Fast and the Furious is that you have, right, these cast of characters, and everybody's kind of operating in these different ways. But then, the conceit has become increasingly more just absolutely bonkers and ludicrous. And what started as
literally ludicrous,
literally ludicrous is on the scene, and it is ludicrous. And
I wasn't sure if you said that intentionally, but I had to bring.
Right. Well, then you have like Dame Helen Mirren, isn't it? Brie Larson's, and like that. You just have, I think, also that there is a lot of room for media to be fun and for there to be a certain level of levity and absurdity. So I think I enjoy that about them. I enjoy the community of folks with whom I watch them, and just how completely outrageous they have become. The whole sort of repeated motif of family I find really enjoyable. But I don't know. I think I just enjoy watching them. And I love how like Vin Diesel is Dominic Toretto, I think now, even in
no one else could play
lived him, experience. Yeah. Right. And so I think I am just also all for like when you find something that you love, just being really loud and obnoxious about it. That is, I mean, I remember as a fantasy girly, love Lord of the Rings and loved the books. And then when the films came out when I was in high school, like we were back when the downtown movie theater was the Bijou, like we were dressed up, like full on
Really?
friends dressed like hobbits, clinging to other friends dressed like Treebeard. Like we just like showed out. And then when I went to college, like we went to so many midnight premieres. I am just a big fan of being enthusiastic for things you love. And so like a lot of times, like the bigger and more sort of like outrageous something is, the more I'm like, yes, like how can I love this thing loud? And it's just a lot easier if the thing itself is already very loud. Like the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, no, it is very loud. And I think that I agree. I think that there is definitely room, if not more room for, I guess what a lot of what we're kind of talking about is there's room to just enjoy something, just to enjoy. Like there doesn't have to be some huge, if the reason why you enjoy something is simply because it's fast and it's loud and it's bright and it's shiny and there's lasers, like go for it. That's great. Yeah. I remember one of the like it's my fandom of it has subsided a little bit, but I'm still like, or I guess my enthusiasm has subsided a little bit. But whenever I originally really got into the Star Wars series was whenever the new trilogy was whenever that was launching, because I had
the J.J. Abrams one.
Yes, and he directed the first one in the third, I'm pretty sure. Because prior to that, like obviously I wasn't around for the original trilogy, and when the prequels came out, I was way too young, and so
I was so into those.
Yeah, but so whenever I kind of came in contact with them first time, I was like, I'll watch them another time. Like I was just like, there's other things I'm doing in my life, like I'll watch them whenever. And I remember when it first came out, like I just got soaked into it. I was like, oh, we're going to see a Star Wars movie in the theater. And I remember walking up, and there was like you said, there was guys dressed like the different characters. There was this
stormtrooper.
There was this, there was like
concession line.
There was an old guy like being old Ben Kenobi walking around like waving to people, and I was like, this is so cool. And
more of that.
Yeah, and you know I know that the Disney trilogy, some people love it, some people hate it. I look back very fondly on them because for me, they're not perfect movies. Like they're not, and they're fun and whatever. But for me, they remind me of a time when I got so engrossed in that, and I was like, this is a different experience. I've never had the opportunity to watch a Star Wars movie in a theater before. All of it was only on a TV screen in my house, and so it's cool to. I think it's cool to be a big fan of something. It doesn't have to be something you're like, oh, well, I like this thing, but only like on the weekends, It's like, no, like if that's a part of who you are, embody that. I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
And I think that that's something that has been really exciting about the bookshop and about book clubs specifically, or maybe the bookshop more generally and the book clubs as being representative of this, is that you have folks who are like, for so long, I have loved romance, or I have loved mysteries, or I have loved epic, sad books. And that has just been something that I have done singularly. But there is just something wonderfully warming and embracing about getting together with other folks and having, like, you've had this experience already with the text where it's really like, or this, I'll have an experience where I'm already like, oh, I just already like loved this book so much. So like, for example, the book we've chosen for May 2023 Romance Book Club is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And my singular experience of reading that book was wonderful. I just loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the setting. I loved the tropes. I loved it. And I have loved it even more in even just the very few conversations that I've had with folks who've read it about what they loved. And I mean, this morning I was like sending little tweets about it to some of our other booksellers who loved it. So I think just that whole idea of like, you can really love something and that's big, but when you get an opportunity to go into a physical space and share in that love with somebody else, like that is a whole other facet of it. And we should be creating more spaces where that happens instead of, creating spaces where it's like, actually like, let's make sure that we're defined by like what we're not or what we don't like or what makes us separate or singular. It's like, no, spaces should be about like, what we love and enjoy. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree. And it's, I think it's one of the coolest things we just as human beings can experience is being in something or experience something or whatever, any kind of art medium, and just kind of forgetting about everything around you. I remember one of the first times that ever happened for me, not one of the first times, but one of the most recent times that happened to me was, I mean, growing up, I'd never been to an art museum before. I grew up in a very small town. There weren't really opportunities for that, and just I'd never taken the time to actually go to one. And maybe a year or so ago, I went to just the art museum here, the Hunter Art Museum.
Yeah.
And I remember being in there, and I was like, "This is amazing!" Like just being in there and seeing so many different kinds of works of art, and just amazed that, like, I know I have never been the most traditionally artistic person, and I was standing like, the fact that someone can perceive this in their mind and then put it onto canvas or put it into a sculpture or whatever was just amazing. It was so cool. And from that experience, like, I realized what kind of different art styles I preferred to different ones. I preferred this kind of, I really, really enjoyed surrealist paintings. Like that was one of the ones that I took pictures of and would go back to my phone and look at. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And it's those moments where you just get engrossed in something. You just kind of forget about, in a good way, but you forget about the world around you and kind of your responsibilities for a little bit. Not that everything else is just drab and lowly, but it's great to be sucked into something, you know, and that's one of the many beauties of life, I really believe, Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, before we, I know you got something going on after this. I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I want to just say, first off, thank you. It was really cool. I know that we've been kind of chatting back and forth a little bit, and on a personal note, I mentioned, I told you that I came into your store like opening day or around opening day, whenever it was. And that was around the time whenever I was either starting this or wanted to start this, or it was in the early days. And I was still workshopping people that I wanted to like have on the show. And I remember walking in, and I left there, and I was sitting in the car with, at the time is now my fiance. At the time was, thank you. We're getting married in a couple months. So yeah, but at the time was girlfriend, now fiance. And I remember sitting in the car, and I said, I want to speak to those people someday. Like, I want to have a conversation and like know them personally. And it's been cool to make good on that. So thank you for allowing me to do that. It's been really, really cool.
Thank you for navigating many rescheduling.
No, I appreciate it.
As you can see, sometimes wanting it.
No, listen. It's okay. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. It's been a great pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it. Before we finish, kind of as just a fun little way to finish the show, it's something I like to do with each episode. I like to finish with a quick segment I like to call 15 Quick Questions.
Wow, okay.
If you wouldn't mind, I have 15 quick questions for you. These are going to be this or that questions. And I usually mix them up for each guest, but I have asked these same questions of also Emily and Blaze. So we can go back
order?
In this order, all the same questions. And so we can go back and compare if you want to, but I thought it'd be fun to have these.
You said it's this or that. Am I allowed to qualify why I say this or that, or I just say it?
Qualify.
And move on.
I am chief qualifier. Okay. I am give more information than is needed most of the time. So, all right, this is 15 quick questions. First off, how do you pronounce it? Caramel or caramel?
Caramel.
All right, I agree. I don't even know how I pronounce it now that I'm thinking about it. Anyways,
too cerebral.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, how do I say it? I don't even know. Hot coffee or iced coffee?
Hot coffee.
I agree. I know I definitely do agree with that. All right, this is technically a multiple choice answer, but which do you prefer? Summer, fall, winter, or spring? Summer. Big summer fan. So you're coming into your peak time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Gemini, 10th baby. I like to be warm. My heated seats are on. It's 50 degrees.
I love it. All right, which do you prefer, sweet or savory food?
Oh, gosh.
This is the tough one. Sweet, nice. I like it. I thought you might be leaning that because like there's I know you don't probably exclusively eat your meals at the shop, but like y'all sell like pastries and croissants and stuff like that.
I ideally both.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
if I'm having an abundance mindset, but I was like, would I rather? The way I decided to parse it out was if I could only do an appetizer or dessert with my entree, I would do dessert.
I like it. I like that. That's a cool way to look at it.
Way to split the.
I like it. All right. In your opinions, when you're wearing sandals with or without socks, what do you think?
Without
socks. You're not a socks with sandals person.
What is the whole function of wearing a sandal if you're going to put a sock on?
I've seen some people rock socks with sandals before, just a bit. I mean, I don't necessarily. It's not my way. But whenever I was growing up, I'm blanking on it now. But there was some Disney Channel show, and they would make songs. They would do different bits, and there was one song they made called "Socks with Sandals," and it was all about wearing socks with your sandals, and they big tube socks and
I
whole
will
nine
say
yards,
that when I used to run cross country and track in high school, that after I would take my spikes off and I would have socks on and I would put so sandals. I think when I heard sandals, I imagined flip flops.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, that would be very uncomfortable. So okay, to each their own. Take care of your feet in the way that's right for you.
I love it. All right, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No, thank you.
I love pineapple on pizza. That's the heartbreaker for me. I'm a big pineapple on pizza fan. That's all right.
Hey.
All right, which do you prefer, sunrise or sunset?
Ooh. I am learning to be a morning person after having had children, and so I feel like I always feel a sense of accomplishment when I'm able to spectate a sunrise. Yeah. However, more often sunsets find me more organically in the rhythm of how I like to be as a person.
Yeah, I love them both. I've become more of a sunrise person, but it does take some effort to get up at the proper time.
Right.
All right, if you had to choose one or the other, which would you choose between guacamole or salsa?
Guacamole.
Big guacamole fan? Nice. I like it. All right. This one is specific for your line of work.
Okay.
Which do you prefer, hardcover or paperback?
Paperback, special edition fantasy, hardcover, special edition fantasy, paperback, romance.
Nice. That's an interesting take. I like it. All right. Which do you prefer, crunchy peanut butter or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth peanut butter.
I'm a big crunchy fan personally, but I do like smooth also. No hate on smooth. Which do you prefer, fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Nice. Who in your mind do you think would be a better chef, Martha Stewart or Snoop Dogg? And I know they both have their own cookbooks, I believe. I know Snoop Dogg does.
And I've made more of Martha's recipes, but I like Snoop Dogg's champagne. Oh. I think I would love to go to a dinner party hosted by both of them.
maybe like Martha cooking and Snoop DJing, something like that. Maybe
he could bartend.
I love it. All right, which decade do you prefer, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
I really like the 70s aesthetic that's having kind of a resurgence.
Yeah.
But I was a 90s kid, so I like a lot of 90s music and some 90s fashion.
Do you have like a favorite 90s band? I'm just curious.
The Spice Girls.
Big Spice Girls fan?
Yes.
Nice. I like it. All right, last two questions of the kind of final four holidays of the year. Which do you prefer, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's?
Halloween.
Big Halloween fan?
Yeah.
My fiance is also a huge Halloween fan. Every year she loves it. So, all right. And then final question. I do ask this question of everybody. I usually choose up the first 14, but I always ask this last question of everybody. Okay. And I definitely want to hear your rationale on this. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? This is really tapping into your fantasy fiction roots here, because this is a very.
I think I would rather fight a horse-sized duck.
Okay, so what's your game plan here?
I think that it would be easier to subdue and domesticate to my side.
Oh, so you're gonna make it like your friend?
Singular, yeah. I'm just envisioning kind of like this is now going to be a companion of mine on the quest ahead, and I think. Yeah, that especially if it would perhaps be able to take flight with me
that would be
on
cool.
it. That would be very helpful.
A little bit kind of like a How to Train Your Dragon type
I'm seeing some kind of elements there. But then if it really did come to a fight, I feel like if I could get the wings out of play, because ducks don't have teeth.
They don't have teeth. That is true. All right. Well, they don't. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they do.
Not like large prominent
like
ones.
Horse teeth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. You're officially on the horse-sized duck camp. I like it. Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I got for you. Thank you for playing along. Before we finish, I know that you all have your website and social media and stuff, so I'll put that in the description. Are there any other links or anything people should be aware of that they can follow you all or find out what you all are doing or anything?
We are most active on Instagram. If you come into the shop, you can opt into our mailing list, which is exclusively about book clubs and events. We don't do like drip campaign marketing yet. So yeah, at the book and cover, all spelled out on Instagram.
Awesome.
Best place to find us.
I love it. Well, I will put that in the description. So if you're listening and want to check them out, I highly recommend it. And if you're in the Chattanooga or surrounding Chattanooga area, go and give them go check them out. I really enjoy them. Or if you're not, if you want to make the trip in, wherever you are, come and check them out. They're doing great stuff over there. So, but yeah, Sarah, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
for having me, Daniel.
And it's been awesome. For everybody listening, thank you very much, as always, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions or want to contact me, that will be down in the description. And as I mentioned, all mentioned links will be down there as well. Thank you for listening to and supporting the show, and I will catch you all on another episode. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. As one final reminder, if you'd like to support the show, then don't forget to rate and review the show wherever you get your podcast, or share it with a friend. If you'd like to check out any links that were mentioned during the show, or follow the show or myself on social media, then feel free to head to the description of today's episode to find these links. As always, thank you again for checking out today's episode, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I will catch you all on the next episode of the podcast. See ya!